Hey, I see you're back. Let's go ahead and continue with what we were doing. So we are on page 209, and we're going to go ahead and continue exploring on how to divide fractions. We've already divided fractions with bar models and with number lines. The last way that we're going to learn is how to use the keep, change, flip method. So if you read along with me on page 209, you'll see that it says, previously you learned what it means to divide with fractions. In this lesson, you will learn more about dividing fractions. Use what you know to try to solve the problems below. Ramona is making clay animals with her friends. She has 3/4 pounds of clay. She shares the clay equally among herself and 3 friends. How much clay does each person have? So, for this specific problem, we're going to go ahead and we're going to write it. The first question that you should be asking yourself is, what's the dividend here? The dividend is how much she's starting with. She's starting with 3/4 pounds of clay. Okay? Then she's going to share that clay equally among herself and 3 friends. So we have Ramona, which is one person. And then we have her 1, 2, 3 friends. So it's 4 people that she's sharing this clay with. So we're going to divide it by 4. Okay? Now, from this point, we want to figure out what the quotient will be using the keep, change, flip method. So what we're going to do is first we're going to make this whole number a fraction. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and put, what number do you think under? Of course, a 1 under the fraction. Okay? Then we're going to use the keep, change, flip method. Okay? So here, we're going to look at this first part. This first fraction, this is 3/4. The K stands for keep. We're going to keep this the same. We're not going to change it at all. We're just going to rewrite it. We're going to keep it the same. The change means instead of having a division sign, we're going to change it to a multiplication sign. Okay? From there, we're going to flip this fraction. And by flip, we mean take the reciprocal. So instead of having 4/1, we're going to have 1/4. Okay? From there, we're going to go ahead and solve because now we're multiplying those fractions. Again, we talked about how dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. That's the same for all of these, right? Instead of dividing by 4, we're going to multiply by 1/4. It's called multiplying by the reciprocal or keep, change, flip. So once we go ahead and multiply, we have 3 times 1, which equals 3. And we have 4 times 4, which equals 16. So the answer here would be 3/16. This is the fastest way to solve division of fractions, but you still need to be able to understand. You should be able to use a bar model or a number line model so that you could prove that this works. Will this work every time? Absolutely. And if you show your work just as this is shown below, you will receive 100% full credit. This is why we went over the bar model and the number line model first, so that we could see how this works. Okay? So, we're going to go ahead and flip over to the next page. So, for number 1, it says, how much clay does each person have when Ramona shares her clay? If you look back over on 210, you will know that they have 3/16. That's how much clay they get. And we were in pounds. Okay? It asks you to explain how you know, and because of that, you should have because. And we use the KCF method, so I'm just going to put because of KCF. Okay? For number 2, it says, look ahead. Dividing 3/4 pounds of clay equally among several people is a division situation that involves fractions. As when you divide with whole numbers, it can be helpful to estimate a quotient before you divide. 2A. Estimate whether 3/4 divided by 6 is greater than or less than the dividend, which is 3/4. Use an example of dividing 3/4 pounds of clay into 6 equal portions to explain your thinking. So, when we do this process and we take 3/4 here, right, and we divide it into 6 pieces. So, this is 6 pieces here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 pieces. we want to know, is this going to be greater than or less than the dividend of 3/4? Now, when we're dividing these into 6 pieces, we're taking these 3/4 parts and we're making them smaller. We're making them smaller fractions, okay? This happens to be 1/8, which is smaller than 1/4. Even though the denominator, 8, is bigger than the denominator here, 4, 1/8, if I take a bar, let's say a Hershey bar, and I split it into 8ths, it's going to be smaller. It'll be smaller pieces than if I split it into 4 pieces. Okay? So here we're looking at the fraction size. How small is each fraction? We're taking the 3/4 and we're dividing it by 6 to figure out how small each of these fractions will be. Therefore, it'll be less than, the fraction size will be less than the dividend. Okay? So we are writing less than, because every time we explain, we're going to add that because so that we can say that we've answered the question. And now when we have our because, that means that we're about to explain. So, less than because we are making smaller pieces, or if you want to be specific, those pieces are actually fractions. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and look at 2B. It says, estimate whether 2½ divided by 1/4 is greater than or less than the dividend 2 1/2. Use an example of dividing 2 1/2 of clay into 1/4 pound portions to explain your thinking. Again, I'm going to use the same problem from before to show you what they mean. So here, this time they're taking the fraction 3 1/4 and they will be dividing it by 1/8 here. Okay, so they're taking 3/4 and they're dividing it by 1/8. When they do that, they no longer are counting to see how small these pieces are, but how many pieces are there. And because we're taking something that's bigger and breaking it into more pieces, we're going to have more pieces than what we started with. Okay, so this is going to be greater than, again, we need to explain, so we're going to add that because we are counting the number of fractions. So we don't care how big the fractions are now. We just want to know how many of them there are. Okay, so that's the difference between these two questions. This question is looking for the size of those fractions. This question is looking for how many 1/4 will fit inside of that 2 1/2. Okay? For part C, it says Yolanda estimates that 3 1/4 divided by 1/8 is about 24. Show how to use multiplication to check whether Yolanda's estimate is reasonable. So if we wanted to check it, we could take 24 and we can multiply it to our divisor to see if we get something close to 3 1/4. So again, we can drop our 1 under. 24 times 1 is 24 over 8, right? 1 times 8 is 8. If you remember from the beginning of the school year, 24 divided by 8, fractions mean division. We're doing 24 divided by 8, which equals 3. She's pretty close, right? But that's not the exact answer. Why don't we go ahead and solve for her? So when we do 3 1/4, when we use the KCF method, we have to make sure that we change this to an improper fraction. So if you don't know how to do that, you need to take the denominator, multiply it times the whole number, and then add the numerator. So we would do 4 times 3, which is 12, and 12 plus 1, which is 13. Here we would have 13 over 4 because the denominator would stay the same, divided by 1/8. Again, we're going to keep, flip, change. Keep the first fraction the same, change the division to multiplication, and flip this fraction. I'm going to go ahead and add my other sheet because I'm running out of space. Kind of over it, right? So here, When we go ahead and multiply, 13 times 8 equals 104. Over 4 times 1 equals 4. And again, this means division. Here you see we did 24 divided by 8 and we got 3. If you go ahead and divide 104 divided by 4, you will get 26. Okay, so her answer was 24. She was pretty close, pretty reasonable. Had she gotten 1 or 1,000, she would have been very, very off, right? So it just depends. Okay? All right. Last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and move this out the way. We're going to go back to 3. So for number 3, it says, what division equation can you write to show that when 3/4 pounds of clay is divided equally among 6 people, each person gets 1/8 pound of clay? How would you use multiplication to check that the quotient is correct? So what we're going to do, again, we got to set it up. The questions you should be asking yourself, what is the dividend here? The dividend is 3/4. And it clearly says that we are dividing it equally among 6 people. So our divisor here would be 6. Okay, and they think that we're supposed to get 1/8. We're going to use our keep, change, flip method. So 3/4, we're keeping that the same. We're changing that division to multiplication. And we're going to flip our fraction. Now, we don't have a fraction here, though. So that's why you can't forget to put your 1 here, right, under all whole numbers. Here, we're going to flip it. So it'll become 1/6. And we're going to multiply straight across. So 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 6 is 24. Here, we have to simplify because 3/24 we didn't get back to 1/8 because we didn't simplify. You have to take a 3 out of both, and because we're taking 3 over 3, it's like we're dividing by 1, and we know that won't change our fraction. So here, 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 24 divided by 3, again, same thing from up here, is 8. Okay, they're all in the same fact family. So we got 1/8, and now we're going to check our work. So we're going to go ahead and put our check. I want to make sure you can see it. We can now take our quotient, 1/8, and we can multiply it to our divisor, 6 over 1. And we should get back to 3/4. So when we're checking, we're doing 1 times 6, which is 6, 8 times 1, which is 8. And here, but we didn't get back to 3/4. So that means that they simplified somewhere. We got to figure out what number goes here, right? 6 divided by what will get you to 3? Oh, that number is 2. And if it's 2 on the top, it's got to be 2 on the bottom. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we got back to 3/4. We got back to our dividend, so we know that we did it correctly. Okay? And here is the lesson for today, for January 7th. So please make sure it's in your iReady book and you submit it on Canvas. If there is anything that does not make sense to you here, that is not clear, please make sure that you come see me in office hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 2 to 3:25. I hope you have a fabulous day, and I'll see you in class.